Welcome to First Star Let's Chat, an athletic therapy podcast. I'm your host, James Gardner, certified athletic therapist, certified strength and conditioning specialist, yoga instructor, human being. This platform, for the pros, by the pros, anybody in the performance space, and beyond. Welcome here to share in the stories of professionals, experiences, journeys, learning along the way. It's a platform to connect, to network, and to be a part of a community that cares, with conversations that matter, experiences that resonate, and generate ideas, thought-provoking, organic dialogue, passionate pros. Brought to you as always by First Star Therapy, Mobility Tape, Epic, and Benchmark Athletics. In association with the Canadian Athletic Therapists Association. It's First Star Let's Chat, an athletic therapy podcast. Thanks for being here. Thank you for being a part of it. Welcome to First Star Let's Chat, an athletic therapy roundtable brought to you by First Star Therapy. I'm your host, James Gardner, and this is a platform for the pros, by the pros. Passionate pros, organic dialogue. Let's chat. Thanks for listening. Let's roll. Thank you very much for being here, everybody, for time out of your busy schedule or your not so busy schedule and just making time to be here, because this goes a long way in promoting our profession, in promoting interconnectedness across professions, and just in honesty, just connecting human beings. And this is what it's all about in these times, is just having good conversation and seeing where it takes us. So thank you, everybody, for being here this evening. Our guest this evening is Alena Luciani, and I will get to her bio here. She is a strength and conditioning coach and business owner. Training2XL is her business. She has a master's in sports science with a distinction in coaching from Ohio University. She did her Bachelor of Kinesiology at Wilfrid Laurier University in Waterloo and has worked as a head strength coach at Wilfrid Laurier University. She interned at Ohio University and was previously an assistant strength and conditioning coach at York University. Alena is certified through the NSCA with a CSCS, and also a registered strength and conditioning coach through the NSCA. She has achieved level 1 coach status through Precision Nutrition and is now a full-time entrepreneur, training, teaching, and leading individuals in more than just strength and conditioning. I don't know if I can summarize you in a page in bio, and I'm sure everybody in the room will get a pretty good feel for that right away. This is an awesome woman who I had the pleasure of meeting at York University when she came in as an assistant strength and conditioning specialist. I met her on the premise of she blew away the interview panel and didn't know what to expect. And obviously the first time we had a conversation, just a very fluid, open book from day one until now. And Alena, if you just want to say hi, and then I'll dive into some other things about you that you don't know I'm going to do.
Oh, geez. Hi, everyone. So my name's Alena. I'm really, really happy to be here. I'm excited to see what the conversation or what comes out of this conversation. So, I mean, I feel like you listed my street cred. But yeah, I'm happy to answer any questions. So as things pop up, happy to chat and happy to be here. So thanks for having me.
Yeah, no, we really appreciate you being here. And the energy is already, it's 7:51 here. So I'm already back up again. I was getting ready to go to sleep after battling a minor meltdown over here that I was just giving you a little insight into with my girl. But hey, I appreciate you being here. And the first question will always be about something that has massive significance for all of us. And that's whether or not you're watching Tiger King in this COVID times. And that's an ongoing tally. So choose your answer wisely.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So I started the first episode and made it 20 minutes in.
And that's it?
And that's it. I'm sorry, everyone.
That's fine. I'm calling that a no. So that makes it.
Okay. Yeah.
So this is session 17. makes it 10 no's and 7 yeses.
Okay.
And as always, half the room will leave now because that's the most important thing.
Bye.
And for everybody else, hang in because this is going to go some places. Alena is wearing blue blockers. She mentioned that to me. So that's one adaptation you've definitely made in these COVID times. Give us a little rundown on those. This is a little impromptu, but just in case everybody's wondering what you got working, they're very stylish.
Thank you. Thank you. So blue blockers, I'm not going to say this in the scientific way, and it's going to start me off and you guys aren't going to trust me. But there is something about the light from our screens and how it reflects kind of things going on in our brain. Again, I promise I'm smarter than how I'm explaining this. But my brother's girlfriend is doing her PhD in clinical neuropsych. So I kind of chatted with her about it because, as I'm sure a lot of us are staring at screens a lot longer than we normally do. Her advice, so if you are going to get blue blockers, her advice is 2 p.m. and on. If we wear them any earlier, it could disrupt some of the things going on in our head. And if I sound really uneducated, I am just admitting this is not an area of strength for me. But even if it's a placebo effect, so far, so good. So here we are. Or it could just cover up my tired eyes. Who knows?
Yeah. But you also just gained the room by just being completely honest, right? And like a lot of the stuff that we do in this field, as I'm listening to you speak, it is very much because we either heard about it somewhere or we're just trying it out to see if it'll work, or like part of it works, or like bicep curls are good because it makes me feel a certain way when I walk out of the room or whatever. So you haven't lost the room. I think if anything else, you've gained the room. I certainly am now paying much more attention to you for being honest than anything else. So I appreciate that. And I'm sure everybody else does. So, okay. For a no for Tiger King, you get the blue blockers working. Let's dive into your path a little bit. So Alena and I crossed paths at York University. That was definitely not your first stop. You really established yourself with your master's degree, and then out of interning at Ohio U, you came back north, right, back to your alma mater, and just give us a rundown on how you got back in there, and then we'll see where we go.
Yeah, so as James mentioned, I did my undergrad at Laurier, and throughout my undergrad was when I really kind of started to dig into the strength and conditioning world. So as I was still a student, a lot of my summer jobs were at various training facilities. And I actually remember the moment that I was like, I want to be a strength and conditioning coach. So it was after a 14-hour day, and I was like laying in the middle of the gym floor at Twist Sport Conditioning in Burlington. So this was actually just about 10 years ago now. And I was with some of the other coaches, and I remember kind of sitting up being like, I'm so tired, but I'm so excited to come back in and do this all over again tomorrow. And that's really when the switch flipped for me. I started to realize, I trained myself kind of outside of my sport. So I was a 5-year student athlete at Laurier, playing basketball and lacrosse, and grew up with 2 older brothers. So I kind of followed their lead. They both played football at Laurier. So when they would come home during the summers, they would put in work for their off-season training. And that's when the wheels really started to turn. And I started to realize the work I was putting in off the court and how it was benefiting me on the court. So as I went into kin and I just started to navigate the world of strength and conditioning, gearing my courses that way, gaining more experience, really just kind of getting my hands in whatever I could. And by the end of my 5th year, I was actually approached by a couple of the sport coaches at Laurier asking to work with our team. So before I graduated, I started working with 4 of the varsity teams as their strength and conditioning coach. And I had a very unique opportunity to actually create the strength and conditioning program at Laurier. So I'm not sure why it took until, I'm sorry if there's any other Laurier grads in here, but I'm not sure why it took until 2014 for them to have a strength and conditioning program. But I'm also very, very grateful that I was given that opportunity. So I was at Laurier for 2 years, and I worked with 13 of the varsity teams there over the course of the 2 years. And then it was after that, I'm not going to lie, I got really, really burnt out. And for a long time, I thought burnout was just a term I read about in one of my kin textbooks. I really, I knew all the red flags. And when I really started to experience it, I saw a lot of the red flags physically, just in how I was recovering and how I was feeling. I really had to kind of put my foot down when it started affecting my mental health. And I share that because we're all service providers in some way, and it's really easy to get wrapped up in helping everyone else, and not, spending the time to ensure that we're good, because we can't be our best if we don't take care of ourselves. So I made the decision to go back to school, and that's when I went to Ohio U to do my master's, which was probably the best decision I could have made. I learned so much in that year, just with the coaches that I worked with. I had the opportunity to, work with some of the teams, travel with some of the teams, and the NCAA is, I'm not going to compare kind of the OUA and the NCAA. It's just totally different worlds. So to be able to experience both sides, I think just, really helped me kind of see things from different perspectives and appreciate things. I remember going to Ohio and showing up in the weight room being like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. Like, look how big this room is. Look at all this equipment. And all of the athletes were like, oh my God, Alena, like Ohio State has like so much more stuff and they have so much more space and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, honestly, it's all about perspective, because I'm coming from a school where I had to, share the gym with every other student at Laurier. So it's all about perspective. So I think I gained a lot of that there. And then, truthfully, I applied to a lot of jobs in the NCAA as I was finishing up my master's. But, it's all about who you know. And I think I'm still kind of growing my network, but I'm really, really fortunate that a position at York opened up, because the reason I was applying to NCAA schools was because there's so many schools, and that means there's a lot more jobs than there are available in Canada. But I guess it was good timing, and I had connected actually with Adam Douglas prior to when I was working at Laurier. So, I had that connection with him, and I guess some people on the panel who interviewed me thought I said something right, and they brought me in. And then I was at York. I guess I should mention I registered my business when I was in, I believe, going into my second year working at Laurier. So I started Training2XL. It was actually born from a small group training program that I brought to Laurier as a student. And my mom is an entrepreneur, so she had just kind of suggested, why don't you register yourself as a business? I had athletes that were graduating asking for programs and things like that. So I was like, you know what, I'll register and kind of see where it goes. And 5 years later, it's now my full-time career. So here we are.
Yeah.
I feel like I probably skipped over some things, but we'll get to those.
We skipped a few things, but none of the things that, I don't know, listen, like, a couple things jumped out at me as you're explaining your path, right? Like, one, you were given the opportunity at Laurier, and I think, yes, part of you was given that opportunity, but the other side of it is that you earned that opportunity, right? You had been there as an undergrad, you had established yourself with a lot of the things that you had done, and I think this goes a long way, right? We talk about relationships, and we talk about timing, and we talk about all these things, and how yeah, sometimes facilities are the draw, right? Like, I need to go to an NCAA school. I need to do this. I need to do that. I need this new business that I'm creating to be everything all at once, instead of like, I'll register, I'll chip away at it as something that's always going to be there in the back. And you've done so much in such a short time. And I'm sure like part of it feels like this huge uphill battle, but certainly it's non-linear in nature, just as humans go. But what a powerful story, and a lot of lessons in that already, just in talking to you. And I don't know, I just want to tell my favorite story about you. So like, my favorite story with Alena was not even when we were working together. It was less than a year ago, I think, right? Like, we were just, I flew back to Toronto with our son, and we were doing some stuff on, I think, Queen West, right? And had not talked to Alena, and we just walked into a Lululemon to look at something, and of course Alena had to walk in. So just like that fate would have it, there we go. Had a good little conversation, caught up, and you were obviously, I don't know, your normal self, bubbly in personality, but hugely deep in perspective. And I mean those both complimentary, obviously. And just one of my favorite things was just being able to like run into you at random and just catch up like we hadn't missed any time, and just kind of just to check in. So I don't know, networks are huge and connections are huge. And I honestly feel like the time that we spent at York, there was a lot of turmoil and some personal stuff, as well as like in the university in terms of where things were going and who was doing what and how it was going to happen behind the scenes. And you and I had a lot of good dialogue when the gym was empty or when the clinic was empty, and also when the gym and clinic were really full, you know. And so maybe I know you're in an entrepreneurial state now where that may not be quite as regular, or maybe it is. We can talk about that too. But in the university setting and working as a strength coach, assistant, full-time, lead, head, you've done it all. So what value is there with S&C and AT sort of either communicating, not communicating, getting together in the gym or getting together in the clinic or outside of the working space? What have you found in your career?
I think, just as athletes on a team sport, we always work better when we work as a team. And I think I'll call it the sport med team. And there's a couple different moving pieces to that, but essentially we're all working towards the same thing, right? We all want to see success in our athletes. We want them to be at their healthiest. We want them to be able to perform at their best. We want to keep them on the ice, on the field, on the court. And to do that, again, strength in numbers. We're better when we're all working together. And I've been really, really fortunate to work alongside some really incredible, athletic therapists in the collegiate setting, whether it was at Laurier, whether it was at York, Ohio. And, I'm a question person. Like, I love asking questions. And I think, our positions overlap a lot. There's a lot of similarities, but there's also a lot of differences. So the more that we can ask questions and learn from each other, the stronger we're going to become as coaches and as, facilitators, but we're also going to make those athletes better. And it's going to be a really welcoming environment. I think, I'm really big on building relationships, building authentic relationships. I think that's incredibly important and something that's not talked about as much in strength and conditioning. And there are some coaches that are really trying to kind of pioneer that conversation now, which I really appreciate. But I think, that goes in all directions. So not just building the relationships with the sport coaches, and with the athletic therapists, but also with the athletes as well. And when we work together as a unit, it's just so much better because unfortunately, I have been in the position where, it's kind of like high school, even when we're adults, and, there's unnecessary friction. And I think when that's kind of eliminated, and when we can work together and understand that, we both have different strengths, and together we're just that, building that strong unit. I feel like I'm saying so many cliches, which makes me cringe a little bit, but I do believe that. And I think part of that is just, I grew up as a team sport athlete. So I always know that, yes, I have strengths as a coach, but I know there's so much that I can learn from other people. And I know we had a couple situations at York when there had to be a couple different people. And as, as a strength coach and as an athletic therapist, we get a lot of FaceTime with the athletes, especially one-on-one, right? So I think it's important that, we start learning more about these athletes and about their lives, and they start to open up and share things that maybe they wouldn't share with their sport coach or some of their teammates. So we become a trusted source. And again, just going back, I think if we're all on the same page, it just makes it, not only more productive, but makes it a lot more fun. Cause I loved coming up to the therapy room when I was at York. Partly because you had windows and we did not in the weight room. So thank you for opening your doors to me.
Yeah. You touch on so many things, and it's really nice to kind of not have any sort of prescribed language as to what we're going to talk about or how we're going to get there. It just seems to come back around, and everybody I have had on these sessions to date has come back around to that athlete-centric model, or just getting to know the human being in front of you on a level that is way beyond how much they're putting up, or how many chin-ups they did, or what did their 1RM look like on August 31st versus December 28th. And I just think that's massive to hear from you, who's seen it in every possible realm in strength and conditioning, and then now so as an entrepreneur, which I really, really think a lot of people, myself included, have a lot of interest in terms of hearing about what that means in your entrepreneurial status. But amazing to hear that kind of stuff. And it also kind of brought up, I asked you before earlier today, I was trying to get in touch with you briefly as you were trying to do your, let me get off the screen for a little while. And then the internet kicked out here because hurricane season is coming early. And, but it knocked out the internet a little bit while we were trying to chat. And I had asked you if you had watched The Last Dance. I know you have a basketball background and all the things. And you said you had watched, so nobody ruin it. You had watched, I think, up to, you use Saturdays, right, to watch?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm not going to steal the show, but like your takeaways from that, pretty awesome, first of all, right?
Oh yeah. Very nostalgic for me. So as I said, I grew up with 2 older brothers, and fun fact about young Alena is when we would go to restaurants and my parents needed us to like be quiet, we would play this game where my brothers would say the first name of a professional athlete and I would have to say the last name. So all the names were Michael Jordan, Scottie Pippen, Charles Barkley. So all of these names that are surfacing at the time probably like didn't put it together because I was, between the ages of like 3 and 8. As I got older, I recognized who it was, but it was just like hearing some of those old names just kind of like flooded back all these old memories. But I mean, there's something so special to get an inside look at the life of an incredibly talented and driven athlete. And I think like that series, I just hope they do it with like every incredible athlete, especially if we stay in lockdown. I would just love for them to like pump out these docu-series. So yeah, big fan of that.
Yeah, what a massive undertaking that project must have been, like thinking way back then to have the footage and then to tie it all together. I don't even know how to overlay music onto video, but I don't know. I had a couple takeaways, and as I was watching it, I was like, this is again, like I always come back around to sort of like coincidence. And then I did this whole yoga thing in last summer and like lived the yogic lifestyle for a whole month, and not to call myself a yogi, but a massively opening experience personally. And I don't know, I just tied the analogy to you, and then you were coming on, and I was like, I'm watching Michael Jordan, okay? And I'm saying like Michael Jordan, and I'm watching this guy just master his own domain, right? And it brought me back to the conversation that we had, probably my most favorite conversation when we were at York, was when we were talking about, what's next? What do you see for yourself? These kinds of things as we were through, I don't know, somebody else's chart or the end of the day when I don't remember the exact scenario. I just remember the conversation very vividly. And you said, I think I've reached my sort of like my creative ceiling here, and I need to branch out and go off and do something else. And the something else you had already had some groundwork laid in place. But what really stood out with Michael Jordan, and that I've connected with you, not just that you both like basketball, or that you have a mean jumper, but like the one thing that I was like the internal motivators, taking external circumstances and making them personal to you to drive you forward, right? And your internal motivation to go out on your these things is a huge inspiration to me, and I'm sure to all of your clients and to anybody who knows you. Stepping away from like the four walls, so to speak, of like of an NCAA institution or an OUA institution, or like those are the jobs that everybody wants, and saying like, I'm going to go out on my own. What did that look and feel like for you? Or what does that feel like now in looking back? And answer that anyway. I know it's a very vague question, but like, how does it feel for you now?
Yeah, so I will tie it back to something that happened actually just days before I started at York, and I'm very open about this, but my dad suddenly passed about a week before I started the position at York, which is a challenge all in itself. But what it really taught me was, again, I'm going to use a cliche, but life really is too short. And when you have something taken from you so quickly, and someone so important to you taken from you so abruptly, it really shows you that, you can't wait around if you want to make something happen. And I've always been very intrinsically motivated. And it wasn't until recently I actually, said to my fiance, I was like, I actually take a lot of pride in the fact that I don't care so much about external factors. And, of course, like it's appreciated when, people compliment your work or whatever it might be, but that is not my driving force, nor has it ever been. When I was an athlete, when I was a student, when I was, as I'm a strength coach and entrepreneur, it was a long process, similar to if there's any other, kind of retired athletes here. There is, that period of time when you go from identifying yourself as an athlete to then having to find a new identity. And, actually my older brother, that's kind of his field of work, which I think is really important, because I know when I was leaving sport, that was really challenging for me. And then I kind of got into strength and conditioning, and then I was like, oh, well, like, I'm a strength coach. And I found that I attached myself to the title of a strength coach, and that title could only come from a collegiate setting. So there were a lot of years when I was like, I cannot call myself a strength and conditioning coach if I don't work for a school. And then, I lost my dad. I started at a school, and there was a ton of positives at York. I really, really enjoyed my experience there. But just as James said, I did get to a point when I was like, I have a roof over my head and I have a ceiling, and I don't like ceilings. I've always been this way. If there's, no path for me, I make my own path. I've kind of always been like that. And, I had to make the decision to, part ways with a collegiate setting, knowing, my resume isn't going anywhere. My experience isn't going anywhere. And if I kind of release myself from this, I can open myself up to some really incredible opportunities. And so I don't, wish anyone having to lose someone so close to them to get that little, I guess, push. But that was a very pivotal moment for me. And I just kind of kept hearing my dad's voice in my head. And he's like, he always called me Peach. And he was just like, Peach, if you want to do this, like, you got to do it. And so, I mean, I still feel like he's a huge driving force. And a big reason why I do what I do now is he was an incredibly influential coach. And I won't talk the whole time about this, but, to see the people that showed up at his funeral, and a lot of them were athletes that he had coached with. So going back to why it's so important to build those relationships is people don't remember the workouts you put them through. People don't remember the rehab exercises you gave them, or the time you gave them stim on their leg. It's the conversations you had when they were in the office with you, or when they were in the weight room with you. And again, it's not something that's talked about a lot in all my textbooks. It's all about the X's and O's. And yes, of course, that's so important. But I also kind of want to bring up the conversation of how important it is to recognize that we work with humans, and we need to take that into consideration.
Yeah, wow. I think we've had enough insight and just morsels of just knowledge from your experience we just call it for the night. Like, amazing stuff. Your insight is way beyond your years. And, I think that's it. And it's sort of like these times right now, I mean, just listening to you speak still now, and in those moments when you and I was very much just getting to know you, and on the fringes of sort of, connecting with you at that point in time in your life. But massive undertaking for you to work through that. And I'm honored to have been a part of that and continue to be a part of that too. And you always talk about, that it's a continual driving force for you. It's amazing to hear, and it's an amazing angle on things to not pass up opportunity, and you're not leaving things behind. You're simply just trying to open doors and open yourself to some things and follow passion. It's amazingly powerful to hear somebody in your position that's done as much as you have in such a short period talk about that, and it's inspiring for me. It's inspiring for, I'm sure, everybody on here, no matter their age or how long they've been practicing or not practicing or doing all of those things. And you're exactly right. It's not about reps and sets at the end of the day. It is to a certain degree, but you just, I don't know. I think you just segued right into that slide that I shared with you too, without even knowing. I'm just going to pull up this slide. So I kind of get into the habit of sharing one slide that I've read in the period between the last Let's Chat session or put it onto a slide, one thing that I've read, and then giving it to the person who's going to be on just to kind of go off. And I don't know, but this is it right here. Let me just, I'm just going to try and pull this up. I'm terrible at technology, as you are well aware. But let me do this real quick. And I'm going to do this. And this is a slide that I shared with Alena. Again, I'm still in this Altus course because I'm taking my time with it. And it's really, it's analysis versus synthesis. And your overview is so philosophically sound that the science and all the X's and O's have very little to do with outcomes. You know what I mean? And I'm not downplaying science. It's important to understand how to structure, how to periodize, how to put certain programs in place. But when you looked at this, I don't know if this influenced how you just spoke, but like for me, exactly what you just said just came to mind. And it's like this synthesis, why it works versus how it works analytically, and breaking things down into component parts definitely has its place in our field. But I think this one over here really gets us to outcomes, right? Would you agree, disagree? I mean, you kind of looked at this maybe for 3 seconds. I don't know.
Yeah, so actually, I now, after a couple of years of putting this off, I now run cueing and programming clinics for other strength coaches, trainers, movement practitioners. And the reason for it is I do find that there are kind of a lot of gaps in our certifications. So they might touch on things, very briefly, but not actually really dive into things. But the other portion that I tie into it is, why it's important to have that deep understanding of what's happening in the body when you're squatting or when you're hinging or when you're pressing, but knowing how to deliver that information in a really clear and concise way. Because we can't do our job if we're not able to take those concepts and break them down in a really digestible way. Because chances are, I'm going to say 90% of the people we work with don't really care what's happening in the human body. They want to know that they're going to get stronger. They want to know that they're going to benefit from it. But it's really important to kind of understand the language and the translation of language. So it's one thing, as I said, to know the X's and O's. And I do think that is vital. And I think now in the world of social media, there's a lot of people out there that put a lot of stuff out there. And I think it is really important to be well educated, but that education and that knowledge doesn't mean much if we're not able to then translate it in a way that people understand. And that's understanding how humans and different individuals receive information or building that relationship. I love the quote, and it's said in various ways, but some of the most mediocre programs end up being the best because the athletes you work with trust you and they adhere to that program. You could write the best program in the world that is perfectly based off percentages and linear periodization and all this stuff, but if the athlete you're working with doesn't trust you and doesn't want to listen to what you have to say, they're not going to follow that program. So it's going to sit on paper. And I don't know, I'm probably going off on a tangent now, but that's why I just think like that the human to human connection is so important, and the way we communicate is so important. And it's not, in every textbook I've read, it's just like, this is what happens when the body is doing this. These are, maybe some internal and a couple external cues, but no one really pays attention to like what happens when the athletes walk in the weight room. So that time between them walking in and then you actually, delivering the program or the exercises, like that in between time, no one talks about it. And it's one of the most vital times we have as service providers, I think, personally.
Hey, and I agree 1,008%, I think, as my son put it, 8,083%. That's what he said earlier today. So I'll quote him and say 100 times over and over, 8,083%. I agree with you. And you bring up so much, like there's so much depth in that, right? Like, I don't know. I don't even know where to go with this. I feel like we could just dive in and just, let's keep going down this whole path. But I'm going to come back around to the Last Dance, because it's top of mind for me, because I was just like, I was a basketball fan. I think I wore Bulls shorts in that time because everybody was wearing Bulls shorts and they're probably hanging halfway down my butt. And like, I don't know, maybe I had a hat on sideways or something, and all kinds of things that were happening at that time. But Andrea Kramer came on, who's an ESPN analyst. And I don't know if you've gotten to this part in the show yet, but maybe you have. So I'll ruin it or not ruin it. Either way, it's already happened, so it doesn't.
Yeah.
But she just said that Michael's ability to be in the moment, no matter what the moment was, like his ability to just put everything else aside and be right where he was, whether it was celebrating a victory or mourning a loss or hitting a shot or not hitting a shot, he was there, right? And I found it so interesting to have that insight into what he would do away from the court, you know, in his own hotel room with his security guards, not out partying, not doing all these things. And then there's sort of like this direct link when I was speaking to somebody earlier in the day, and it's like Kawhi Leonard was very much the same with the Raptors when they just won, right? No social media presence, and like a very reserved sort of like I'm not going to be the highlight reel until I'm on the court kind of personality. But this is very much it for you as well. Like my perception of you was always very like, I'm here, and these are the kind of people that I want to surround myself with, or these kind of people that are in the moment, you know, because it brings more out in me. It brings more out in the athletes and this dialogue and interaction. I mean, I know your brother is very much in this area, and you are too through what you do. Do you do anything specifically in terms of like mindfulness or meditation, either with your clients or for yourself, or throw those words away and just say like, yeah, I am consciously intentful with what I do. Is that a practice for you, or it just comes naturally, or?
So I think that there are some things I've tried to introduce into kind of my everyday routine. And to be honest, it wasn't until recently that I kind of said, you know, I was so stressed. You know, Ryan and I tried to meditate every day of May, and there were a couple days we lost, and I was like feeling guilty about it. And I thought about it. I'm like, yes, I feel great when I meditate. I was just kind of following headspace. But at the same time, I'm like, I can't discredit all the things that I do naturally that are already habits that I don't even think twice about doing. And a big one for me is prioritizing my movement before kind of tapping into anything else. So I am the crazy person that would rather wake up at 4 a.m. and get my workout in before I met with a 6 a.m. athlete or team or client, because that's how I prioritize my mental health. And I do have to say, I used to be a big person, you know, a big music person. So a lot of my workouts were kind of driven by music. And after I lost my dad, I couldn't bring myself to put my headphones in while I worked out. And it kind of became that just kind of peaceful time. So I think, you know, if you were to ask me this a couple months ago, I probably would have said, oh, there's so many things that I should be doing. But there's a lot of things that are just kind of worked into my day. And if that's kind of sitting in silence or going for a walk, I find that when I do any sort of rhythmic movement, that's meditation for me. So that's going for a walk, going for a run, and I opt to do it in silence, so I can really kind of take in what's around me. I also live in the heart of downtown Toronto, so when you're running at 5:30 in the morning, it's important to be alert. So yeah, as I said, I think that, you know, of course, would I love to get a meditation practice going every day? For sure. It's something I do that I guess like I'm just kind of realizing now is I write a lot of notes to myself. So I know like affirmations are big and it's kind of a buzzword, and it's not necessarily that I write those things, but it's just kind of little reminders, you know, of who I am, what I believe in, what I'm capable of. And you know, as you were talking about The Last Dance, one of my favorite quotes, especially as I was, you know, in my athletic career and athletic journey, my favorite quote was, the true test of a person's character is what they do when no one's watching. And I still really kind of believe in that wholeheartedly. I do share a lot on social media. I think Instagram is a free marketing tool for entrepreneurs. So it really is useful to kind of use that and share what I'm doing each day. But there is so much that goes on behind the scenes that I choose not to share. And for me, that's almost like a little bit, and this could be that kind of intrinsic motivation, but that to me like lights a fire. It's like, I almost love when people kind of underestimate me and think I'm not doing anything. And I just know no one else has to know, but I know that, you know, I'm laying the groundwork and I'm putting in the work behind closed doors. So what is presented to people is, you know, maybe a polished service, or, you know, the way I coach, or a successful clinic, or whatever it might be, but, you know, they don't see the little things that go on behind closed doors. And just as, you know, that was MJ, that's what he did, right? He put in a lot of work when the cameras weren't on, which I really admire about him.
Yeah, that's it, right? We're kind of in a strange age where everything is digitized and everything is available, and social media is a thing, and that's a positive, but it's also a detriment to society on certain levels, both in the performance world, the sports world, and as a whole, like as for young learners and young people. But there are some definite benefits, and anybody who doesn't follow Alena, this is a great plug opportunity for her, is at Training2XL. Like, get on that Instagram and see what you can do with minimal equipment in downtown Toronto at 4 a.m. Like we had I had Jay Agabayo. Did you know Jay? Did you met Jay? Maybe when he was with the Argos, strength coach, when the Argos were at York, or it might have been just in the transition.
Yeah, I think I was just after.
And he was saying, like, he gets up at 3:45 every day to lift and make sure he gets that done before he goes to train anybody else. And it's kind of like, I got to live this if I'm going to teach it and breathe it. And there's nothing to say, like, all of what he said and all of what you said jives with actually doing what you're living. You know what I mean? Instead of just like, I'm not just a surface that I'm putting out on Instagram. I'm living this, and that makes it very real, and people feel that, right? Like, as an entrepreneur, I'm sure like every one of your clients feels that this isn't just a service on the surface, and you're doing, I don't know, I know you like donuts, but like, you're not just going out and eating, like, you know, you're living your best lifestyle and you're being your best you, and you're improving on a regular basis to help yourself first and then everybody else around you. And I think that's a massive undertaking and realization, right? Like, I'm kind of just slowly evolving to that. And you talked about, as a retired athlete, how you associate with being, you know, that athlete for a certain period of time. I mean, I openly admit now, which I never would have in the moment, when I first transitioned from professional baseball to York University, that like, that was my identity, was to be 16-hour days. Make sure you never admit you're tired. Make sure your khakis are always tucked in a certain way. Make sure you have X, Y, and Z. You know, the things that I felt like I could control were under control. And now, in looking back, like, that helped me grow in terms of a reflection. But it takes some time to transition out of who you feel like you are in a moment. And it honestly takes having other people who are living moment to moment and being very successful with sort of that driven. And you played a big role in my maturity and in my evolution as I currently see it. So I don't know. I think like this platform for me is very much about connecting people, but at the same time, it's also like a public forum for me to thank you for the influence that you've had in my life. So right off the hop, I mean, we're a little ways in here. It feels like we've been talking for 5 minutes, but I want to thank you for all that you did for all the athletes, first and foremost at York, and continue to do for everybody that you work with. But in my career as well, like, you made a huge impact and continue to do so. And off camera, we'll have some conversations about some other things that we need not discuss here. But I don't know, the other one, and maybe let's dive into the entrepreneur angle a little bit, because the other quote that really stood out for me in The Last Dance, because it's top of mind and everybody's doing it, was Andrew Kramer quoted, they were shooting, did you see this? They were shooting from the sidelines. They were shooting like jumpers from the sideline, and everybody was missing, and Michael was just kind of like hanging out. If you haven't seen it, you will see it. I'll ruin it for you. Spoiler alert, but he's just kind of hanging out on the table, right? And editing or not, who cares? And he's sitting out on the table, and then all of a sudden he's the last guy to shoot, and he just stands up and he just drains it from the sideline, you know, like this long distance three Steve Kerr's missed. Everybody's missed their shot. They've been close, but not. And he just hits it. And it's this idea of not being afraid to fail, right? It's like, you'll never know unless you try, but like, you're never going to try if you think you're going to fail. So I don't know, that mindset is part of you. It's part of how you got to where you're at. Maybe take us on a little journey of how scary it was, but also like how you overcame that to sort of jump in. If it was scary for you, I don't know.
Yeah, it most definitely was scary, because as I said, I was really attached to that identity of being a collegiate strength coach. And I thought if I went out on my own, I wouldn't be able to, you know, let's say, hold that title. And I do really, really value the title of strength and conditioning coach, because that coach part of the title really means a lot to me. And a big part of that is being able to carry on my dad's legacy, because he was such an influential coach. And that's why when people are like, oh, so you're a personal trainer? I'm like, oh no, I'm a strength and conditioning coach. And they're like, isn't that the same thing? And I, you know, anyway, that's a whole other thing. Not that there's anything wrong with being called a personal trainer. As I said, I just, you know, I really take to heart that coach part of my title. And I think for a long time, I kind of held back because I was scared to lose that. But I just kind of said to myself one day, I think I was, it was probably a drop in time and there wasn't really anyone in the gym. And I was just kind of sitting, maybe plugging away at a program I was writing for someone else. And I just kind of thought of it and I was like, you know what? I'm going to give it a year. Okay. I'm going to give myself April to April. If it's not working out the way I had planned, I still have my connections. There's a couple different training facilities I could be a part of. And to be honest, it's now been over 2 years and I haven't thought twice about, that leaving that role. And of course, there are things that I miss about being in the collegiate setting. And I'm fortunate that I've created opportunities for myself to still work with team sports. And I have a group of hockey players that I work with in their off season. And that very much is my happy place because that is my bread and butter. But just as we chatted a little bit about before, I really did feel a ceiling over my head. And I just kind of said to myself, I was like, I'm going to give it a try. I'm going to try some things. I'm going to mess up. But my biggest failures have always been my biggest steps. And I, believe that through and through from, and even just the small ones. Like I remember being at Laurier, thinking back to the way I used to program for those athletes versus how I program now. And I think in my head, I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe I programmed like that, or like, why would I ever think that's a good idea? But it's like that taught me something that, moved me in the right direction. And I do want to mention, because this is something that I've had obviously we've had a lot of time to think over these past 10 weeks or so, but I have kind of come into this realization that even though I left the collegiate setting and I was okay with kind of being this strength and conditioning coach and entrepreneur, I was still feeling pressure from the field of strength and conditioning to be a certain way. And, I'm going to use the example of going to a conference. And if you go to a strength and conditioning conference, and there's nothing wrong with this, but everyone looks the same. Everyone's wearing khakis and everyone's wearing a polo. And I'm most likely the one of the few coaches that aren't wearing a khaki or a polo. And again, there is nothing wrong with that outfit, but it's just kind of that physical representation of everyone kind of wearing the same thing, everyone kind of talking the same way. I would go and kind of connect with the coaches I knew, and everyone was just kind of talking about the same things and reading the same books and listening to the same podcasts. And yes, that's great. I think it's amazing when we're all aligned, but what fun is that? Like, and not that I want to create like friction or challenge each other. It's not that, but I just think it's okay to carve your own path. And something that I've just kind of realized over the past, couple months is, I am a strength coach through and through. I believe in all the science. I believe in all these things that are talked about and, with all these very well-educated, let's say high up strength coaches. But I also like to march to the beat of my own drum. And I also make it, more reflective of me. And, that's why I'm so passionate about these clinics that I run, because we take the nuts and bolts and we take the education piece, but I'm able to frame things in a way that, I've learned from my experience, I've learned from my certifications, and deliver it in a way that, for some people is a little bit more approachable. Because I know there are a lot of strength coaches that I love learning from, but they're not approachable. And I wouldn't really be the one to like put up my hand and ask a question, because I would, in fear of them kind of looking down on me, being like, you're not that smart. Like, that's a silly question. So I just think I've finally started to realize that, I could sit at the table with the big dogs, but I don't have to wear a khaki and polos. And, I'm happy to rock my Lululemon the way I do, or, just be who I am and own that and take ownership of it. And I think that's actually made me a better coach, because I'm not trying to be someone I'm not. And, if there's always going to be pressures. And I do think in our field, there are a lot of opinions. And I think it's really easy to get caught up in what these pioneer coaches and therapists believe in. But I also think there's a way to do it that's a better representation of you. And I think it comes across a lot more genuine.
Yeah.
I don't know if that answered the question.
I think you answered every single question. when it came to, following your passion and doing the things. Like it's obvious when you talk that what you're doing is exactly what you want to be doing. You're passionate, you're driven. Like I'm giddy just listening to you and speaking now about like just hearing you.
Sweating.
Yeah, sweating a little bit right onto the armpit. And I don't know, like if those strength coaches look down on you when you were going to ask the question, like how many of them are wearing blue blockers after 2 p.m. right now, right? Like, yeah, not many.
Yeah.
Don't go well with khakis and overhead pressing or whatever we're doing these days. But anyway, well, like such an immensely deep answer, and I don't even remember the question, but I know that I just write a bunch of stuff down when I watch this again for the third time. Anybody who's considering like options, I can't find jobs, I can't find work, that's part of the deal with athletic therapy in my experience and my opinion and my biases that I've come to know is I've always gone to a job that has clientele. It has boxes, it has walls, it has a bus, it has a clinic, it has a strength, it has this, it has that. And I don't think those are necessarily barriers. That those can be seen as barriers as much as they can be seen as opportunities. But it's not for everybody to go out on their own. That those things are great as well. And those things also help shape you, right? Like into finding what it is you want to do and how you want to do it, what worked, all the programming and all the relationships that you built and all those things. So it's amazing to hear. And I think for me, who's, I don't know how many years out of being certified and as a practitioner who's fairly average at everything that I do, education or otherwise, to hear it, at a younger age or even like at the point in my career that I'm at, it's very helpful and it's very refreshing. And it gives you a peace of mind in terms of, opportunity doesn't have to look a certain way. You can create it, you can drive it, you can hop on board or hop off whenever you want. You just kind of do that. And I think your story, even just to this point in the conversation, I'm taking notes mentally and going back and trying to connect to a whole bunch of things. But you talked about reading the same books and not necessarily and aligning thoughts and these kinds of things. What are you reading right now that's not strength and conditioning, or do you have anything on the go? Or
I do. I'm trying to look for it. Dr. Greg Wells. I'm reading his new book, Rest, Recharge, Recover. I'm butchering it, but Dr. Greg Wells is awesome. He wrote The Ripple Effect, and I think his other book is Super Bodies. The Ripple Effect is an excellent read. I recommend it to absolutely everyone, whether you are in kind of the human performance field or not. He writes things, backs it all up with science, but writes in such a way that anyone can take information from it. So it's actually a candle holder right now is the book, but it's rest. I think it's called Rest, Recharge, Recover, but he dives a lot into kind of the world of mindfulness, breathing, recovery, and in a world that is so go, how important it is to recharge, which I'm trying to take a lot of notes from, because I do struggle with sometimes always feeling like I need to be on. But then I vowed that the book next that I read is going to be Becoming with Michelle Obama, because I have a really bad habit of only reading books that I think will kind of educate me more in the world of human performance. And I do want to, I know that I can learn a lot from Michelle Obama. I watched her special on Netflix, and she's just the kind of person I want to be friends with. So I'm going to read her book next.
I love it. And Dr. Wells is Canadian, right? Like he does a lot of his work out of U of T, if not all of his work out of U of T. So anybody who's looking for Canadiana, this is kind of the theme with the majority of our guests being Canadian and trying to house a little bit more awareness of what athletic therapy is and strength and conditioning and what those fields can open up for people in Canada. Massive. Greg Wells has done a ton of work, a ton of science, but it's all relatable too. He does a lot of stuff with different schools and different implications with the university, with the research and those kinds of things. So we'll make sure that we get those resources up. Those will be up in the discussion section of the YouTube channel when we post this afterwards, so that everybody has them, and I'll make sure I get the name right or wrong. Either way,
Yeah, sorry.
Everybody's probably Googling it right now anyway, and that'll be the answer. Amazing stuff, and stuff outside of the field. I think has so much benefit too, because it finds a way to creep into what you do anyway, because just the way we think and the way that we transition between topics and these kinds of things. And there's a couple really good books. I'm going to send you the title. I just made a massive order on a Canadian site for books, because we're going to come into this 2-week isolation here next week when we get home, and I wanted a stack of books to read, because I don't like reading on the computer, and I don't have blue blockers, and nor would I make them look anywhere as cool as you do either. So that's another highlight of you wearing those. And so like just tapping into some of like the philosophical approaches, and that's what not to plug Altus, but it's just because it's top of mind for me. I'm doing this Altus performance therapy course, and it's very in-depth and it's very philosophically driven, as opposed to like tips and tidbits and tricks to make somebody run faster or do whatever. It comes to like that analysis, and that's directly where that slide was from, analysis versus synthesis. And sort of like, yeah, you can get in there and focus on the nitty gritty when you need to, but you also need to step back and say like, why am I doing, what am I doing? How is it going to affect this person? And how am I actually evaluating? Because a lot of what we evaluate in the gym or in the clinic or on the field is very, for lack of a better term, is very biased based on the style of learning and the experimentation that's been done to generate the knowledge that we have to date. It's a two-dimensional textbook of what anatomy looks like. It's an origin and an insertion, and then it does this. But what about the interplay? Because when we leave out the interplay, we're leaving out the answer, right? Like a bicep goes from here to here and helps in flexion of the elbow and some other things that I can't remember the name of. But, I think it's interesting. Anyway, you jumped off, I jumped off tangents, and you mentioned tangents and going off. There's never a bad tangent. Anybody who knows me, I think my tangents are like the worst, right? Like I'll just go off down a rabbit hole and never come back. So yours were fantastic, but I believe in just kind of following where your mind takes you and see where it goes until everybody logs off.
Actually, I did want to mention something I'm doing, and I only mention it because it's been really insightful for me, and I would just encourage kind of anyone to take this on. So something I've started doing is I've actually been reaching out to leaders in other industries. So I have a friend who is kind of in a director sales role at a startup company here downtown Toronto. I've reached out to a couple different leaders, and I've almost done these like mini kind of leadership interviews, and I have kind of a bank of questions, and I just have a conversation with them, because I think the leadership world is really is vital if you work with humans, whether you have a team under you, or you're just working with but you're working with athletes, or this could be kind of in any aspect of your life. But I've just gained so much insight from having conversations with people outside the world of human performance. So I mean, I love conversations like this, but I think it's also really cool to chat with people that have no idea what we do in the weight room or in the clinic, and they talk about strategies that they use to lead people, and a lot of it overlaps with what we do. And I feel like I've been able to tap into almost like a new skill set, even if it's just kind of like almost interviewing the individual, but also taking that information and being able to lead others in a better way. So I think the more that we can kind of get outside of the box we sometimes sit in, we just learn so much. And I just thought of that kind of going off that book thing, because as I said, I have a bad habit of being like, how is this going to make me a better coach? And how is this going to make me smarter? But I think there's so much we can learn when we read things and listen to things that are totally outside our scope of practice. It's just going to, show us a different perspective. And I think there's a lot to learn from that.
Yeah, massive insight. And as you're talking, I'm thinking like, there's this book that I've just, so my thing now is to like, if I'm going to order books, I'm going to order them from a Canadian site, hopefully. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to order, if I order 3, that are specific to the practice of what I'm doing. I'm going to try to offset it. It's like a push-pull ratio here. You know what I mean? And I'm going to try and get a 2 to 3 ratio. So I'm going to get 2 books that are outside of that, and a couple of the ones that I ordered, I'm really looking forward to is like sort of like your philosophical approaches to sort of the way you think and these kinds of things. And then the other one that came up as you're speaking for whatever reason was The Alchemist. I don't know if you've read it, but I've read it now probably 3 to 5 times in my life. And every time that I've read it, it has had greater and greater and greater impact and meaning. It's a really small book. And the first time I read it, I was like, what, why does everyone make such a big deal about this book? But then I did the yoga thing last summer, and then I read it again. And I was just like, my whole world just became a whole new place, the world around me and everything that I'm thinking. So I encourage, like, once you get to a point where you feel like I have a really solid foundation in what I'm doing and what I believe in, with some, obviously the science backing it and those kinds of things, is branching out and doing these things. And those conversations that you're having, I'm sure are having a massive impact in the way that you do things and the way that you continue to lead as an entrepreneur. I haven't seen Ryan in the background tonight, but he's probably, how do you keep him out of the screen? This is a hard thing to do, right?
It is. He was playing Call of Duty and now he's listening to New Girl, or watching New Girl, it's on Netflix. And if you need a lighthearted show, New Girl or Brooklyn Nine-Nine, those are our go-tos. Great way to decompress. But yeah, we have a very cozy 500 square foot apartment here downtown Toronto. So I'm actually sitting in our dining room, which is also our kitchen, which transforms into our weight room in the morning. So It's a very versatile space. Yeah.
That's you, just versatile as can be. So it's very fitting, and it looks like super neat and tidy and nice clean edges. Like, very well done. Very well done. Yeah, it looks good on you. If anybody has anything specific they want to ask Alena, I'll just, we won't keep you too much longer. I know you spend a lot of time online throughout the day, and this is, I really appreciate you taking some extra time for this conversation. I know a lot of people were, again, looking forward to it. I certainly was, to research some things in me and to have a conversation sort of face to face, as it were. So yeah, if anybody has anything, pop it in the chat box real quick, and I'll try to get them to Alena here before we let her go. I'm in the habit of keeping people far too long and then end up online and resentful. So that's not where we want to go. We're living in a world where that's a thing.
I'm having fun, so I'll hang out as long as anyone.
Yeah, we'll just keep chatting. So entrepreneur, strength stuff, all of the things that you encompass. Give us a couple things that really stand out from your experience in the varsity setting, just in terms of like where you felt the impact of a training program, or moving a little bit away from the relationships, but like where you saw that aha moment for an athlete or some success on the field that you could sort of translate to what you're doing. I don't put you on the spot, but I feel like that's relevant.
You know what, I would say, I think, and this does tie into the relationships thing a little bit, but when I was at Ohio, I worked with the women's track and field team. And I started utilizing a daily wellness survey. So every morning that they had a lift, they would get a survey, Google form sent right to their email, and they would fill it out. And, up until that point, I had always worked with almost too many athletes at once to be able to use that and kind of track that data and apply it to, what I call kind of pencil and paper programming, especially in season. And so it was really nice to have kind of that smaller group that I could work with and to be able to take the information that they gave me, because when we work with student athletes, there are so many other factors going on, right? They're not Olympic athletes that are just training full time. They have school, they have midterms, they have, boyfriends, girlfriends, like they have a ton going on. So to kind of be able to take those different factors into consideration, the nutrition piece, and actually be able to take what we were doing in a lift and have, maybe there was a small group of them that were just following the program as is. Maybe there were a couple of them that needed some more recovery, or, maybe a couple of them, needed extra mobility or attention to a certain area. So it was really cool to be able to kind of get that information and actually put it into practice, as I said, because I worked with a smaller group. And, outside of the weight room, I got the opportunity to go grocery shopping with a lot of athletes, which sounds kind of silly, but I think, that's a skill. That's a life skill that empower athletes to make really good choices that have them performing better and at their best when they're able to fuel their bodies properly. And, there was a lot of aha moments in the grocery store when it was like, I want you to read the ingredients. Can you read them out loud for me? And having them trying to read craft singles, the ingredients in craft singles. So not only was that incredibly enjoyable, but it was also, very empowering for them, because then they would kind of send me pictures of their meals and just to see that they were taking the information that they learned and putting it into practice. Or it could have been, exercises that I showed them to do to, maybe strengthen something that they needed to work on, and seeing them do that on their own. I think the empowering them to make their own decisions to perform at their best is really powerful. There's probably some specifics. They're just not coming to my head right now, but
that's perfectly okay. Right on the spot. And I just listened to you, and it just brings up so much in me as well. It's like you talk about, a daily wellness form and working with student athletes. I have an opportunity right now that I'm working with a performance group and doing an internship, on the strength and conditioning side, just to sort of harness some knowledge and add some input and have some insight into what's going on. And the one thing that I think I certainly have overlooked in the past, and that some of the young strength and conditioning specialists and people who are moving towards that field tend to overlook in the student athlete population, is the student portion. So really paying attention to how much time they're studenting and how much time they're athleting. And especially in the Canadian setting, like in the US setting, there's definitely probably a lot more hours athleting, than they are studenting.
Athlete student.
Yeah. At certain levels, at least in certain schools, but really important to pay attention to what your athletes are reporting. And then you talk about aha moments in the grocery store. And this is a big one for me, is getting giddy because I really want to tell this story. I was walking my son around in the grocery store, and the basic rules, like stick to the perimeter, you'll be okay. Once you get into the aisles, you're in kind of some dangerous territory. Well, he's 5, and I started teaching him about rather organically. I don't even remember how the conversation came up, but it was about colors and bright colors of packaging. And so now when we go to the grocery store, he'll look at the bright colors and he'll go, not today, bright colors. Bright colors are just not the things that are good for him, unless they're not in a package. Then he knows, okay, bright colors are good for me. We've established that early. But wow, it's massive insight for people that are working with athletes. Get out of the clinic and get out of the gym and go to the grocery store. Just do it. You're harnessing a relationship, you're building the trust you've talked about, and then you're informing them, or you're finding out I don't know, a cool recipe you can use with craft singles. Either way, everybody.
Actually, Eric Cressy talked about that at the beginning of quarantine. So I love Eric Cressy. I think he's such a great individual to learn from. But he talked about how instead of worrying about all these at-home workouts and what you're going to do, he said, kind of wrote a tweet or whatever to his athletes saying, learn how to cook. That's a life skill that's going to take your performance to, big, high levels. So those are the kind of things when I came to York, it's I wanted to talk to athletes about nutrition because, they could kill it in the weight room, but if they go home and put crap in their body, then they're not going to perform at their best. And just teaching them that there's so many different factors at play.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay. Let me get to these questions because I could just keep asking them myself. What are some of the most successful tactics you use to help market your business? And what tactics have not worked for you and your business?
Ooh. Okay. So I think in terms, again, I hate it when I just use cliches, but,
cliches
I think or not cliches, but just, I can't think of the word right now, but I think being myself has gone a really long way in marketing. I think when people kind of feel that human connection, even through a screen. So, if it comes to Instagram, when I talk to the screen, it feels uncomfortable and it doesn't always feel genuine, or it doesn't always feel natural because I'm talking to people, but not. I'm just looking at my phone. But people want to connect with people. So if I could show that, I am Training2XL, I am, the coach behind this business and in this page or whatever it is, I think that's a really important marketing tool. And also leading with education. So that's really big for me on my social platforms. I want to use it in an not an educated way. Again, I'm kind of losing the word, but I want to be a trusted source for individuals to come to, whether it's about training or coaching or, the nutrition stuff I post. I want them to know that, it's coming from an educated source as opposed to a lot of crap that's out there right now. And, there's a lot of people that might look the part, but they don't necessarily have the information to back it up. So for me, my biggest thing is leading with education and also showing my face and being myself. And I expose Ryan a lot on my social media when he's doing funny stuff or when we're just being ourselves. And I think that's an important piece to it, because people are like, oh, okay, cool, she's a human. Like, there's not a robot behind that account. So I do think that's an important piece to marketing. And social is a great tool for that kind of free self-promotion, but it takes time. You gotta build up that trust with the individuals that, you are connecting with you.
Absolutely stunning answer. And I think anybody who's looking to do it or considering doing it or is struggling, Alena is a great resource, and she leads through example. More than happy to talk about some of the realities of what it means to go on your own and the struggle, because that's obviously been a part of your growth too. And some of the past topics we've talked about, learning from mistakes, learning from struggles. Struggles are the that's growth happening, really. When it comes down to it, is when we struggle, we're growing, and that's an important takeaway. But what great question and a huge answer that everybody should take away. Another one that just came in, I'm sure you're reading the screen too, but from Lindsay Shopwell, how do you keep your clients motivated? How do you keep your athletes or clients motivated and driven to meet their goals over long periods of time?
That's a great question. I think being a source of support for them is really, really important. Hi, Shadi. Sorry. I think just, being there for an individual, because there's a lot of times, like when I work with athletes, off seasons are long. They, things don't happen overnight. Things don't happen in the first week. But if I'm constantly there to even just give them a little nudge or, a little piece of encouragement, or maybe share a new tactic to help them get to that next level, I think just being that source of support is really important, because I think sometimes what happens when people set goals is they take on so much at once. And, we all want things to happen really quickly. And in order to build sustainable habits, it takes a lot of time. So to just constantly be there as someone to be like, hey, keep going, or like, yes, you're moving in the right direction, or like, yeah, I got your back, or, being a listening ear. I think that's important. It's not necessarily like giving more information or giving more strategies. It's just a matter of being present with them and knowing that they're not alone in the process. So that you have their back throughout the course of that. Because, when I have clients that come to me that are like, I want to, get stronger, or I want to be healthier. Well, like, that's pretty broad. Like, there's a lot of different directions we can go. So obviously they're not going to wake up the next day and their world is going to be overhauled. It's going to take time, but knowing that, I've got their back throughout that process, I think does, go a long way, because, it's easier to push through something when you're not alone in it. And I think that all comes back to also being kind of the team sport athlete I am. I want to feel that support, and I want to give that support to others around me.
Wow, amazing. I don't even have words. You're just you sport the education, and you sport like just being the business. It's amazing to listen to you. So kudos to you over and over and over again. One more question, and then we'll let you go, because I know you what is it? Mean Girl? What's it? Any girl? New girl. And Ryan's probably over there trying to start throwing stuff or funny things that you want to get over as a part of. How has COVID affected your business and interactions with clientele?
To be honest, I spend a lot more time on Zoom, as I'm sure we all do. I'm very, very fortunate that the individuals that I was working with kind of pre-COVID and the athletes that I should have kind of been in the gym with at the beginning of April, they're all still with me. And yeah, things look a little bit different. And now my training sessions are through a screen, and I'm kind of sitting at my desk, which feels a little bit weird, but I'm very, very fortunate that I'm still able to do what I do. And, I mentioned these clinics that I run, and pretty quickly I was like, okay, well, we're bringing them into the virtual world. And as much as I want to be in a gym and taking people through this, it's actually been really cool to have individuals I have someone from China, I have someone from Dubai, I have, a handful of states are represented, people from all over Canada, which that's the beauty of the virtual world, is I'm able to connect with people that I wouldn't normally be able to connect with. So I actually even picked up a couple new athletes, a couple new clients from different areas, because I'm able to support them in this kind of virtual space. And I'm very excited to get back in the gym with my athletes, and we might kind of get some outdoor sessions fired up to just kind of get back into the swing of things. But it's been cool. I've had to adapt, and it's one of those things where I'm like, you know what, I'm going to try these clinics online, or I'm going to try this online. And if it doesn't work, then we'll scratch it and we'll figure out something else. But that's part of being an entrepreneur. There's no one there to tell you otherwise, which is great. And sometimes can be a challenge because you're by yourself. So, so far, so good. Knock on wood.
Yeah. Amazing. Making lemonade from lemons, as it were. Very fitting end. I really appreciate your time, Alena, as always, and I think you're doing an amazing job. Not that you need my praise, but keep doing what you're doing. You're an inspiration for so many people, not just your clients, anybody who gets to know you and has the opportunity to talk to you. Alena is a massive resource for anybody who wants to reach out. Please do so. She obviously has a limited time, but at the same time is accessible too. So. Anybody who feels like you've connected a little bit with some of the information, I'm sure Alena will find a way to get in touch with you. I'm happy to do so as well.
Okay.
Anything. Yeah.
I'll write my email, so you guys have my email if you want to.
Yeah.
There you go.
So there's that one.
Want to email me.
Yep. There's that one. Everybody else, I'll just go over this week's schedule before I let you go, Alena, and then I'll say bye. But Saturday night is a special edition. Let's chat. It's a talkie night in Canada. We have ATs from coast to coast in every province across the country, a youth sport therapist in each province. And that'll be a great one if you're looking for some insight into how people have gotten to where they've been, how they've gotten to where they've been, how they've gotten to where they currently are, where they have been, some rehab stuff we'll get into. So really looking forward to that. I'll be in some dodgy hotel in the U.S. I hope, if we haven't been stopped by trying to host that one. Sunday night will be Adam Douglas will be on, another massive influence in my life, another person that I've been able to call a friend, a colleague, a mentor, all in one, just the same as you, Alena. And this has been amazing. You've opened my eyes to 6 new pages of notes I need to go through. So I appreciate that. And say hi to Ryan, say hi to everybody there, and we'll connect again soon. For everybody else, thank you so much for being here. This has been Let's Chat, an athletic therapy roundtable, session 17. Anybody who wishes to stay on and hang out, I will remain in the room, but the recording will stop as soon as we say goodbye. So, Alena, thank you again. Thank you. Have a great night.
Thank you so much for having me, everyone. It was great connecting.
All right. I'll talk to you soon. Everybody else, thank you so much. And like I said, I'll be hanging out. Good night.
Platform for the pros, by the pros. Passionate pros, organic dialogue. Let's chat. Thanks for listening. Let's roll.
Thanks again for being here. Thanks for listening. Thanks for being a part of this community. Check us out online, firststartherapy.com. That's FIRSTAR therapy.com. Or email us with feedback, consult@firststartherapy.com. CONSULT at firststartherapy.com, on Instagram at firststar.therapy, and our podcast host at letschat.at. This is First Star Let's Chat, an athletic therapy podcast.